wait. That just might be a little too hot, or even too cold. The thing is, you should just put it down.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Spoiler alert.
And what are you doing sitting here missing the party?
Despite taking place nearly 2 decades after the original show's conclusion, the Frasier remake was able to reverse its ending with a single sentence. In contrast to Cheers, which had a conclusive ending, its spin-off had Frasier leave Seattle after 11 years for a more flexible finish. Following his resignation from KCL and farewelling to his loved ones, Kelsey Grammer's pretentious therapist packed his things and reportedly took off for San Francisco, where he was expected to begin a new career as a TV show presenter. But as he followed Charlotte to Chicago, the ever-romantic made a haphazard attempt to put his love life ahead of his work. Not surprisingly, Frasier decided at the last minute to accompany Charlotte to the Windy City. It wasn't really necessary for him to have a lucrative career because he already had enough money from his days of practicing independently in Boston. Furthermore, he made it apparent that he desired what Martin and Niles had at the conclusion of the show, a secure personal life, as Martin had recently married Ronnie and his brother had a growing family with Daphne. Even so, it was a clever way to cap off the most successful comedy series on Emmy. The Frasier relaunch on Paramount Plus manages to reverse the conclusion of the original show, which ended 19 years ago, in the simplest way conceivable. Charlotte and Frasier's reboot unmistakably shows that they split up. Frasier and Charlotte are seated side by side at a table. One of the most important mysteries going into the Frasier reboot is what happened to Frasier and Charlotte at the end of the original episode. There had been no indication of Charlotte's involvement in the project before the series premiered, with Laura Linney asserting that she had no knowledge of the Paramount Plus initiative. And, lo and behold, the pilot for the Frasier reboot revealed why. The Good Father, the pilot for the Frasier reboot, immediately revealed what transpired when Frasier's jet touched down in Chicago. His grand romantic effort appears to have been successful. Sadly, it did not endure as long as he had planned. Frasier's longtime buddy Alan Cornwall welcomes him to Boston and asks him to give a guest lecture in his Harvard class. After they catch up, the sequence can be used as an explanation for the series. It was confirmed during the chat that Frasier was in Seattle since Martin Crane had recently passed away. Before that, Frasier and Charlotte spent several years residing in Chicago, but he also ended his relationship with his fiancée, and at the same time, he made the decision to leave his TV program. Regretfully, the rebirth hasn't made it clear why. The relationship between Frasier and Charlotte persisted long after it was first ended. Frasier on the Frasier reboot poster, sipping coffee. Given how recently Frasier and Charlotte broke up, it's reasonable to conclude that they were dating for a considerable amount of time. Frasier just intended to finally pursue their romance when he made the decision to accompany her to Chicago. It was obvious that they were drawn to one another, and their friendship served as a springboard for their romance. But before their romance could really get going, she moved to Chicago. Nothing could stop them from being together, not even Frasier's desire to move to Chicago. Perhaps Frasier wouldn't have felt the need to go so quickly if Charlotte had stayed in Seattle. Although the job offer in San Francisco was helpful, he had a very successful career in the Emerald City. Considering his desired lifestyle, he didn't really need the extra money, but it wouldn't have hurt. Rather, he was pining for a love affair, especially after witnessing the happiness it brought to his father and brother. Why it was necessary for Frasier's reboot to split up with Charlotte. In the Frasier revival, Kelsey Grammer plays Frasier playing a piano. Due to some casting issues, Grammer has stated publicly that the original plan for the Frasier reboot had to be modified. For background, Martin was unable to participate in the new show due to John Mahoney's passing in 2018. Jane Leeves and David Hyde Pierce, however, graciously declined to appear. There's been no official indication on whether Linney was going to reprise her role as Charlotte, but narratively, it makes far more sense to begin the show with Frasier in a fresh beginning. Besides, if Charlotte had stayed in Chicago, the character's transfer to Boston would not have worked either. Frasier hasn't talked to Charlotte about what went wrong between them. They must have been truly in love with one another if their relationship lasted for nearly 2 decades. It was odd that there was no talk of them getting married, given how long they had been together. Given his history of unsuccessful marriages, it's plausible that Frasier didn't want the prospect of getting married to put any strain on his relationship with Charlotte. Regardless, the Frasier relaunch has enough episodes left to really examine this issue.